podcast right here with Wazetics OS, Waz Mental Wealth with another edition of Freestyle Friday. So we're going to get right into it on this day's Freestyle Friday. What we're talking about is this right here. I always say, you don't know what you don't know. I'm going to say it again. You don't know what you don't know. A lot of times people don't know what they don't know. So if you don't know what you don't know, how will you ever know? How will you ever know? How will you discover what you don't know if you don't know what you don't know? Sounds kind of like a conundrum, like paradox, or like a contradiction, right? So with that comes having mentors, guidance, advisors, coaches, having direction. Because if you don't know what you don't know, the only way that you will realize what you don't know is when you run into a situation where you discover that you're not able to make a move, or you made a move that brought about results that was not in your favor, or you came into a situation where you was just stuck, like, I don't know what to do right now, and you needed some information on what it is that would get you to be able to go back into motion again from not being stuck, right? So because if you don't know what you don't know, how would you ever know? And the main thing with that comes, how do you be able to choose the right advisor? How do you know the right mentor to look towards, or the right coach? And we are talking about life and business. When we are talking about people that's dealing with entrepreneurship, startup companies, they might be first generation entrepreneurs just coming out of the workforce, or still in the workforce, and you know having in their mind that they want to go and venture into entrepreneurship, and they don't really know where to start sometime. And even if they do know where to start, they might not know how to take it to the next level of scaling from where they started from, to be able to actually create a money making machine that leads to a legacy enterprise. So that's what we are talking about today. How do you know what you don't know? And how do you be able to choose the right information, the right guidance, the right mentor, the right advisor? Basically, how do you discern? How are you able to evaluate what's the right information from what's the wrong information? What's the right business coach, or right business consultant, advisor, or mentor to listen to? Because when it comes to a lot of stuff out these days, people um have positioned themselves as advisors, as consultants, as coaches, and they have fees attached to it. And not just these days at all, it's kind of like always been that way when it comes to the business world and life too. So that's why you have what you call like psychologists, you have accountants, you have lawyers, you have um coaches, you know. So, and these people are those who should have experience in what they are providing as advice. The person should have had some type of experience in what they are advising you on, or what they are mentoring you on. And so now, with the age of YouTube, where anybody can put a video up, anybody can create content and position themselves with the image of, I know what I'm talking about. Listen to this information. I have this information for you. This is the cost of this information. And then sometimes you have people who will pay for this information. They might pay this person, for them to coach them, to advise them, or to mentor them, or what have you. And then in that process, the information, or the guidance, or the instructions that they receive might not come out to be what they expected. And so then you have a situation of, well, I put my money into this, I spent my money with this person, and the results that I was told that I would receive, I didn't receive. And then that kind of like have people reluctant to move forward with opportunities that could be before, presented to them with genuine mentorship, genuine advisory, genuine coaching, genuine consulting. This is just a part of what you go through in the journey of entrepreneurship. It's just having a conversation yesterday with someone, and they was telling me how they had, spent money with someone who presented themselves to be a business coach, an advisor, someone that had information that they could utilize to help them get to where they were seeking to go with their business. They were just starting up in with their business venture, and they needed information on, what's the next step, what are the next steps I need to take, what are the moves I need to make, what do I really need to know to get to where I really want to go. And that's a lot of times we're dealing with sometimes you're dealing with trial and error, but I'm going to give you a way of how you can analyze these things, how you can examine it. Because what you look at is um credentials on one level, then you look at experience on another level. Because even though you can have the credentials, you can have someone who went to college, you can have someone who have been certified in certain areas of a subject matter, and not really actually have the experience where they have became proficient at it with having strategy in real life experience. And see, a lot of times, even though you get the credentials, you still got to deal with the application. And when you deal with the application, you're dealing with live situations where you encounter variables. You might have learned this way, and then in the curriculum of what you learned, they might not even had this variable, this situation provided to you as something that you would learn how to deal with. So this falls back on the person and within their own mind and how they can think and utilize uh wisdom or discernment to be able to make strategic informed decisions. And when you looking towards finding someone who could provide that for you, what you do is look at who else have they did it for? Who else have they provided the information, the guidance, the insight, or the coaching, or the mentorship? Who else have they coached in this? Who else have they provided this thing that they're trying to provide you? Who else? And then look at their results. Look, and then a lot of times that still might not mean that you would get the same results by going through whatever they went through with the individual who's an advisor, a coach, or a mentor. So the results could vary because it still goes back to you as an individual and how you take the initiative to use the information, to use the guidance, to apply what you learn. So this right here is a holistic thing. It is made up of a lot of different parts. There's a lot of different moving parts involved in this. So it's one of those things where you just have to keep pushing, keep moving, keep applying yourself towards your goals and network with people and understand that within the world and the journey of entrepreneurship, you're going to take losses and sometimes you're going to take very big losses. And so it's a psychology that's involved in this and where you learn how to um like take the loss and turn the stumbling block into a stepping stone where it's really not a loss. Because if you learn from it, if you get knowledge from it, and you learn how not to do what you did, or it bring about some type of experience that you will be able to use in your future, because you will run into what you went through again in a different form. That's just how life is set up. And so I'm going to switch gears one time. So let's talk about this right here, right? When you go and look at the United States Constitution, that's the supreme law of the land. And from the United States Constitution, every other aspect of would you say amendments, policies, rules, regulation, all stem out of the United States Constitution. And even if it does not stem from the United States Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, because sometimes somebody can just come up with something based off what they see or what they think should be, and they can frame it into a law or frame it into a policy, and it might not be in alignment with the United States Constitution. And that's where you have the ability to challenge those type of things and get those things to be changed, because why? There is some type of violation going on in regards to constitutional right, things that are afforded to you through the United States Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. Why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing this up because when you look at uh, the world of business, entrepreneurship, and you are someone who wants to enter into the market of entrepreneurship. I mean, you want to start your own company, start your own business, and you want to build this business up. Some people want to build a business up just to sell it. Then you have some people who want to build a business up to pass down and have it as a legacy uh, business. Having a brand that it continues to go on, such as things like Walmart or Ford or Gucci, Louis Vuitton. See, these are brands that have been around for a very long time. So they was passed down and passed down from one generation to the next generation. And that's what I call legacy. So you got to think about this part. When you seeking to enter into the world of business, there are already rules there. It's already structured with rules, regulations, and certain laws. And most of the time, these things are considered to be barriers of entry. And how did these barriers of entry become to be? These barriers of entry came to be like this. Let me pause for a second. April 25th in Charlotte, North Carolina, we got the Young Entrepreneur Summit. Let's make sure you get your tickets on Eventbrite. You can go on Eventbrite and look up Young Entrepreneur Summit, April the 25th. We're going to have masterclass. We're going to have panel discussions. It's all about Black economics, Black economic empowerment, Black-owned businesses, and we're going to have a showcase lineup. We got sponsors. We have vendor spaces. If you want to get on to be a sponsor, you want to get on to be a vendor, contact Wise on social media, on a Law King Wise on IG, Facebook, TikTok, on LinkedIn is Wise Shahid. So this is what we have going on April the 25th. It's going to be a showcase lineup. We got performances by local artists, and we got my brother Shaheem the Rugged coming through. He's going to give some insight on his experiences in the music business and the film business as a young individual who grew up through those stages and was like pioneering certain things in the music and film business. And that insight is going to be provided. And he's also going to be performing with a host of other performers. We're going to have poetry, neo soul, and hip hop. April the 25th starts at 12 o'clock all the way to 9 o'clock is what we got for the lineup. In the early part of the day, at the noontime, is when we're dealing with the masterclass, panel discussions, and business showcasing. And then later that night, we have the degrees of sound or the degrees of culture, which is performances, poetry, neo soul, hip hop. Now, back to this Freestyle Friday with Wazetics Mental Wealth. So, what I was talking about, barriers of entry. These barriers of entry into business are established by other businesses, companies who have already like cemented themselves. They have been rooted in the economy. So, perfect example: AT&T, Walmart, Ford, or Wells Fargo Bank, Bank of America. These are legacy companies. They are rooted in the American market. They really rooted in the global market. So what happens is you have the CEOs, you have the shareholders, you have um competition. So you have another company that might try to come up and do what they do. So what happens is the owners of, for example, Walmart, what they would do is they would go to their local legislators and they would say, we would like this to be a law. It could be as simple as when you want to start a company that deals with retail in this fashion, you got to have this or you got to do that, right? And now that produces a barrier of entry for someone else who might want to try to start a company that's similar to Walmart and do what Walmart does. And these policies will go into place, and these are the things that you must align with as someone that's seeking to compete against Walmart as a startup company, right? And even if you're a company that's already there, like Kmart was already there. So Kmart could have been lobbying, and that's what it happens when you are a company and you want to get the politicians to put laws in place to help protect you from competition and things like that. You have lobbyists. And so these are a group of people who go to the politicians and say, well, look, we should have this as a law. And the reason why we should have this as a law, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what would they be doing to help influence this with the politician? They're giving the politician gifts, they helping fund their campaign, they're doing all these things to help persuade the politician. But now the politician has to also persuade his colleagues, the other politicians that exist within, whatever level of politics they exist on. Could it be city council? Could be state representatives? Could be on the federal level with Congress, House of Representatives, and the Senate. So when you start to talk about entrepreneurship, you can't really be successful in entrepreneurship, especially if you're talking about building a major money making machine that you're able to pass down to um generations and generations, or you want to build it up to the point where you want to take it public. You got a corporation, a C corp, you want to take this company public, and then you want to sell it to someone else. You're going to have an understanding of how politics works, because politics coexists with economics, whether you know it or not, whether you can see it, whether you agree or disagree. It is what it is. Politics exists in the world of economics. In the world of politics, economics exists. Because why? In order for you to run as a politician in a campaign, you need what? Finances. You need money behind your campaign to make sure that the people could get to see you as a better candidate than the other person. So now we're talking about commercials, we're talking about billboards, we're talking about people canvassing, knocking on doors, and all of that costs money. So now the campaign has to have funds behind it to be able to execute on that level. So this is where the lobbyists come in. This is where you have what the PACs, the super PACs, political action committee, all of these things exist. They connect together holistically. So now when you're talking about looking for a coach, a business coach, or a life coach, advisor, a mentor, these are some of the things that you would look for. Does this person have an understanding of all of what I just said? Because they could give you specific information. You have certain aspects of mentorship that's subject matter based on a small granular level, or just a very narrow level. Like, I can show you how to get your credit. I can show you how to structure your credit profile to qualify you to apply for credit. That's in that narrow scope of work. Yes, you can find someone that does that. And then you might be talking about, well, I'm looking for someone to show me how to strategically think in my business, to scale my business, to be able to create a legacy. See, when you're looking for someone that's dealing with that, you're going to be talking about a holistic approach of everything that I just said. Someone who understands the social, political aspect of things, the political, economical aspect of things, and how these things relate, interrelate, connect, and how to use it strategically for leverage for you to achieve your goals. And that calls for you to understand that life is business and business is what? War. So if you don't know what you don't know, how will you ever know? You have to pay attention to every aspect of first realizing what your goals and objectives are, and what do you need to achieve those goals and objectives. And if you don't know what you need to achieve those goals and objectives, this is where you search for other people who have already done what you are striving to achieve. And even if they have not done the same exact thing that you are striving to achieve, there are certain similarities. And this is where analogy come in at. And this is where my legal way of looking at things come in, Well, because when you start to talk about law, and I said the United States Constitution, this is supreme law of the land, and we start looking at what was the legislative intent, meaning that what was the intent behind having this as a law, because it's a whole surrounding, it's a whole, so it's like uh um a process surrounding that. It's a scenario surrounding that. So they might say, well, because people are doing X, Y, and Z, and when they do X, Y, and Z, it creates a negative result where it's hindering something. So now they would say, well, because of that, we need this to be a law that prevents that from happening. So that becomes the legislative intent. They produced this law so that they could prevent this from happening. That becomes the legislative intent. And when you understand the legislative intent, now you know how to produce an argument one way or the other. Are you someone that's challenging someone for violating the law? Or are you someone that has been accused of violating the law and now you have to defend that? So they got the plaintiff, the defendant, or the prosecutor and the defendant. Those are the two sides of the law. And it produces the room or the field of operation for what you call argument. And now your argument comes now to be whether you can persuade the one who is the decision maker on calling it out, meaning the judge or the jury. Are you able to persuade the judge or the jury with your argument that's premised on you, someone who is initiating a challenge to someone who has violated the law, or you're someone who is being accused of violating the law and you defending your position? That is the mindset of how you deal with that. And now, how does that relate to economics? Because it still goes into when we start to deal with civil law. Because when you're still dealing with business, it's usually coming from the civil aspect, right? And I'm not going to go into the history of civil law in the United States and how it's linked to the Roman law and common law of England and all that stuff like that. I'm not going to go deep into that because that will give you a mindset understanding on one level. But we right here, right now on this level. And so we're going to do it like this. We're talking about how do you know how to choose the right coach, mentor, advisor, consultant. How do you know how to choose to listen to the right guidance, the right information? And like I said, the way you do that is look at the individual and look at those who we have already provided this information, guidance, mentorship, advisory to. And then you have to look at that not in a clear cut way of, oh, because this person provided this information or guidance to this person, I look at the results and they were successful, that I too would be successful. That not necessarily mean that as well. It just means that you can see that this person does possess the ability to provide right guidance, right information that could lead to certain successful results. But keep in mind, when you're talking about the world of economics and the world of politics, all that together is forever changing. Laws are constantly changing. Policies are constantly changing. Regulations are constantly changing. So what might have been relevant yesterday may not be relevant today, and what's relevant today might not be relevant tomorrow. So it's an organic system. It's a living organism that we are talking about. And how they say some people look at the Constitution as a living document, then some people look at the Constitution as is static, meaning that whatever the legislative intent was of the forefathers when they structured the United States Constitution, whatever they had in mind at that time, that's what it is. There's no room to interpret it for the present day experiences that we live in society. Then you have some who say, well, it's a living document of adapting to the changes of the time, and we can apply it this way for this day and time. And this is the way we, view what's going on. And that produces what you call conservative and liberal views. And again, all of this goes together. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're seeking to be successful, but you don't have no understanding of politics, you're really not going to be a successful entrepreneur. You can get some success, but when I'm talking about lasting success, and this is not a lottery ticket, boom, I made it type of thing. It's something that is a process. It's a journey. And with that, I'm about to get ready to go on this Freestyle Friday, hit you with some things today that you could think about, take back and analyze, and now give you a way of evaluating information, evaluating people, places, and things when it comes to you and your life and your business. And this is what I call the Wazetics way of thinking. This is Wazetics way of thinking. Wazetics OS Life Biz Infrastructure. This is how I have formulated my life experiences, my business experiences into a brand, into a system that allows people to utilize it for their success. Your success might not look like this other person's success, but what it does is it gives you a way of thinking. I'm not telling a person what to think. I'm just showing you how to think, how to utilize your mind in a way that allows you to be successful in whatever you put your mind to. And that involves understanding the landscape of everything else that's going on around you in the world, because we live in a world where it's things that have been set in place. And like I said earlier, it's barriers. It's people who have placed barriers in place to block out competition, to block out other people from being able to achieve the same things that they have been able to achieve. Because when we start talking about economics, we're talking about customers, we're talking about people that's vying for resources. They are seeking to get as many people to buy from them, utilize their services as possible, right? So now that is what creates the world of economics. That also is what creates the world of politics. So if you're dealing with a person who are telling you that they are a life and business coach or advisor, and all they talking about is the economic side, which is I can show you how to get your credit right. I can show you how to structure this company. I can show you how to sell, you know, got salesmanship. I can show you how to market. Those things are good. They are like subject matters within, they are compartments, they are parts, right? But you want to deal with the whole system. Now, again, you can hire someone for specific things. You can hire an accountant that deals with, you know, the rules of accounting and structuring your financial statements. You can have someone that's a lawyer that's protecting your brand when you start talking about trademark registration, or making sure you are in accordance with whatever rules and regulations that govern whatever aspect of business you're dealing with, right? And then the part that a lot of people that dealing with economics leave out is the politicians. You got to have them involved as well. You got to have understanding the politics as well. But again, all of these are different subject matters. These are different parts. These are different it's essential parts. What Wazetics OS Life Biz Infrastructure, what I do as a systems advisor is I show you how all of that links together and how to look at it from a holistic view. This is the difference from me and a lot of other people and what they provide. And this is what gives me what is considered to be my edge or my unique selling proposition. Is it's a full package. And a lot of people can't understand that. See, this is really for the elite, but I make it available for the masses who can recognize the demand for it, the need for it. But again, if you don't know what you don't know, how will you ever know? Peace.